Arn-Iowan opened his eyes to see what kept him from falling to certain doom. He'd been caught in the surprisingly gentle hands of a lay dragon. The Watchman of the North knew of only one rider who had successfully bonded with a lay dragon. Nefaria Pike, the captain of the Scale Swan honor guard. Just as Solstice had told him in his youth, the Ministers of Grace would ensure that a Scale Swan would not allow a brother or sister to fall, which meant that despite Corneilius' admonishment at the Wilden border, and his blunder in the Vault of Asol, he was a true Scale Swan. An unsettling thought still crept into Arn-Iowan's mind as he was beginning to wonder if he'd actually encounter any male allies, aside from Morris and Matthew, on this quest. Merrill, Questelin, Laurel, Edita, Shalindria, now Nefaria, even Corneilius. Why had only women warriors of the land offered him any assistance? Was he seen as such a buffoon among his male peers that aiding him was beneath them? Was there not one among Solstice's students, the Brotherhood of Arn, that actually saw him as their brother? Even if he was a true Scale Swan, would he forever be the significantly lesser Arn-Iowan when compared to Eobane? This contemplation would have to wait as he spotted Morris and Matthew waiting for him at the fork of the Roa Galtor. Nefaria's lay dragon touched down beside them and released its grip on Arn-Iowan now that he was safe. This class reunion would not last long, however. Nefaria informed the company that she had to depart immediately to surveil the movements of a large corps of orc cavalry that had left the Fist and appeared to be heading in the direction of the necropolis. Much talk had arisen that Dark was seeking an alliance with the orcs to all but ensure his annihilation of the Wilden. If the League were crushed, with the Knights Immortal in ideological disarray, and the Black Powder Rebellion not able to withstand attacks from three sides, to say nothing of his being in possession of the Vermilion Crown, Dark's forces could very easily conquer the entire land. As Nefaria departed, Arn-Iowan pondered the situation. Dark's plan could not be allowed to succeed. But what could the three of them hope to achieve against a legion of orc and necropolite forces, and the undead madman who wielded the power to control his opponents' very minds and bodies? He was too far away from any allies to call for aid, or so he thought. For as the sun began to rise, Morris spotted an approaching group of Free Army soldiers, and as fortune was smiling on that moment, they were soldiers who could spread the word quickly to any who were friendly to their cause. It was none other than Keldane and his falconers. Their gyre falcons were the fastest messenger service known in any region. The future of the land now lay in the speed with which Matthew Rowland Scott could put quill and ink to parchment.
Most noble Stormbringers twins, I bear unfortunate news. The campaign of concept was merely a ruse. Redirect your forces to the Black Lake. Alliance with the orcs. Necropolis looks to make. Bring reinforcements to make a stand for the land. For our land. I seek to rescue Captain LeSabre. My friend shall arrive with rare red stones to forge dragon's breath, which only you can hold. Your pair of more metal bows greatly of your hands. Crew of the treacherous wench, ladies of martial review, your captain needs you now, so do I too. Take me a rower sanguine to the Black Lake, raid the necropolis, rescue attempt to make the future is hanging by a strand for the land.
As Morris and Matthew rode for Camson to meet with Michael Fixit, Arn-Iowan waited at the fork of the Roar Galtor. It was not long before the treacherous wench came into view. A skiff was lowered, and Arn-Iowan was greeted at the shore by a half-elf named Sarah Rampart, the crew's quartermistress and shield maiden. Sarah begged pardon for having no time for pleasantries, as they had a long journey ahead. Once aboard, Arn-Iowan reunited with Questelin and Merrill and met the rest of the command crew. Wilden elf artillerist Ceresia, Mystica, a crystal sprite who served as the ship's healer and defensive diversionary magic user, and the first mate, a strange creature called a Quasiel Shipwrecks. At one point human, she was enslaved by the Atlantis Guild and experimented on to see what the long-term effects of Magestone exposure could be. The Magus in charge did not live long after learning the results. Sailing up the Roa Sanguine for all the daylight hours and part of the night, the treacherous wench approached the Black Lake. Mystica clouded their approach with a fog spell to confound their enemies, but clear was their own vision. Soon the necropolis was in sight. However, it appeared abandoned, as though every denizen had been committed to the campaigns in the Wilden, Periska, or as emissaries sent to greet their new Orc allies. Equally strange was that on the Skull Bridge that connected the Necropolis Island to the mainland, Arn-Iowan spotted his love, Lady Colleen. The crew lowered him in the skiff to retrieve her, as a Quasiel ordered the ship turned around so they could make way quickly back to the Roa Sanguine for a fast getaway heading downstream. The rescue had to be timely. Arn-Iowan reached Lady Colleen on the Skull Bridge and was puzzled as to why she, though shackled, was armed with her cutlass and fuser pistol. Using Serpent Fang to break the chains, The Watchman helped the seemingly delirious pirate maiden to her feet and into the skiff. Just as the skiff was halfway to the ship, another dense fog suddenly rolled in from the island. From the mist emerged Dark's own battleship, the Spectre General. Arn-Iowan rowed the skiff ashore to the mainland as the treacherous wench had to go full sail to outrun the more heavily armed Necropolitan ship, and could not wait for them to reboard. On shore, Arn-Iowan continued to lead Lady Colleen towards safety until he felt her hand slip out of his. He then heard the unsheathing of a sword and turned to see his love, pointing her cutlass at him, her eyes as wide as moonlight. She then spoke in a voice he'd not heard since his childhood, saying, "You've lost my unclaimed prize." The owner of that voice soon appeared nearby, accompanied by his consort, Carlana, and wearing the vermilion crown. None other than Dark, the Corrupt.
Dark's hold on Colleen stems from that cursed helm. Despite her iron will, his power can overwhelm. Milady's flame mastery always outshone mine. To win and not harm her, strategy I must design. I toss my cloak as a distraction and I rush to no avail. Coup d'oeil across my back, I'm only saved by dragon scales. A flash of steel as I soars me and her furies gaining fuel. My thoughts consume my passion for her. How could fate be so cruel to place us in this lover's duel? Strategy, tactical withdrawal, make Colleen come to me. I'll make a flirty comment, get her attention. Innuendo about her assets with a bit of pretension. had struck a nerve. Colleen lunges, I quasi attack out then I riposte. My lady counters attrition, we go nowhere. The corner or we know each other so well, stubborn as mules. The dog's fed up with the stalemate, makes Colleen draw her pistol. The blast turns this lover's duel. I hit the ground, wounded shoulder, and I dropped serpent and delirious. I reminisce romantic songs we once sang. Oh, Colleen, how I adore you, my beloved albatross. Reach for my staff, and I block her strike in the shape of a cross. In the shape of a cross. A sudden blinding gloss. Oh, Colleen, my albatross.
Arn-Iowan had closed his eyes, even though his spectacles shielded them from the brightness of the flash. In that instant, he heard 3 separate objects fall to the ground next to him. The cutlass, the pistol, and Lady Colleen herself. The watchman in the north then felt a slapping at his left leg. He sat up and opened his eyes to a most puzzling sight. His beloved on the ground, with a mermaid's tail where her legs ought to be. Quizzical expressions washed over the faces of Auditorius and Doc, as this was the last thing either of them expected to happen in battle. Arn-Iowan then recalled the legend Shalindria had told him in the Emerald Glade. Colleen must be one of the long-lost daughters of Mara and Hector, for only someone of merfolk ancestry could be affected by Mantagonon's enchantment on the sword and staff. He also recalled the Stormbringer twins' words in the letter to him, that the scheme of Doc would stumble over the relics the Scale Swan in his beloved hold, meaning his walking staff and Captain LeSaber's cutlass. Doc was furious over having his triumph undone by such a ridiculous turn of events. That rage was temporary, however, as he took note of the sunrise. Though he would lose much strength in the daylight as well, he was not disarmed, nursing a bullet wound, or suffering from a perpetually gimped right leg as Arn-Iowan was. Feeling the advantage would be his in a final duel, Doc sent Carlana away for the time being. The vampire warlord had additional reason to beam with confidence. On the western hill overlooking the valley, his new orc allies had arrived along with a massive body of his own necropolis cavalry. The situation on the treacherous wench was faring no better, as his death merchants had boarded the vessel, and the air assault had the crew pinned down. As seemed to be the running gag in this quest, things looked very grim indeed for Arn-Iowan Auditorius. Then suddenly, a sound like an incoming shell from a black powder mortar pierced the air, and a large wooden object impacted the ground between Doc and the Watchman in the north. Upon closer examination, this was what remained of Cossack Dogbringer. As legend has it, a corrupted forest troll will turn to wood if it loses its games. Arn-Iowan and Doc both looked to the east from whence Cossack's husk had been launched. Silhouetted by the rising sun was an army of equal size to the combined Orc and Necropolis forces. At the center of the line, flanked as always by the captains of the guard, were the Stormbringer twins of Hobtopia. Hope was not yet lost. 3 days had passed since the battle on the shores of the Black Lake had ended. Arn-Iowan finally awoke to find himself on an island held by the Elemental League, just off the Stunlander coast. The Stormbringer twins had brought him and Lady Colleen there to heal their wounds, and to reverse the merfolk enchantment so Lady Colleen would walk as a human once more. When the Watchman in the north did not see his loyal squire or the chronicler anywhere in sight, he feared for their safety. The twins assuaged his fears, revealing that Morris and Matthew had returned to the Vale of Dawn to help Lady Solstice set the Dragon Lady in, after first handing over the relics they'd borrowed from Esau to the twins' cousin, Morvana, who easily snuck the relics back into the vault, as if they'd never been taken in the first place. Remarkably, the chunk of mage stone Morris cut to make the dragon's breath appeared to magically regrow itself to the main deposit, so as not to arouse further suspicion of an actual theft, as if the mage stone itself recognized it was taken for a noble cause. The twins revealed, as Arn-Iowan had partially deduced, that Colleen was one of the daughters mentioned in Shalindria's tale, which she had told to plant a memory in Arn-Iowan's mind. The other daughter was none other than Aquasiel Shipwrecks, Colleen's first mate, her merfolk heritage being the primary reason for the specific transformation she underwent when exposed to the Mage Stone all those years ago. The bond between the two dear friends now strengthened even more with the knowledge of their familial ties. Alas, just as the great white shark will die should it stop moving, Captain LeSabre could not stay in one place for too long, as it defies her natural wanderlust. Arn-Iowan beseeched her to return with him to the Vale of Dawn, where they could settle down together and hopefully leave the life of danger behind them. For all he wanted since they first met was for her to be by his side always, where they could watch over each other for the rest of their days. Lady Colleen gently kissed Arn-Iowan on the cheek and whispered something in his ear. She then turned and boarded the treacherous wench, which then sailed off for winds of fortune. As his beloved vanished over the horizon, Arn-Iowan dropped to his knees and wept. The Stormbringer twins approached and inquired what troubled their brave watchman so, despite having already discerned the burden of his heart. And thus was Arn-Iowan's lament.
Just a matter of time. What's it all for? Are there true winners in war? To keep the peace good, the folk must fight. Such irony for the upright. In a way, it makes sense. The vulnerable need a good defense. That's what it's for, why noble souls will go to war. And so it goes, the call we can't refuse. This is warrior's life we did not choose. Honor and justice, the value of a gold. For that we face dangers untold. May our shield serve the pain and study war no more. But until that glorious day, I'm the watchman in the north.
This movement concludes, but the concerto remains unfinished. The Necropolis made several more attempts to wipe out the Elemental League and conquer the land. Each were thwarted, and the Dark Crusaders and Orcs would be driven into exile far beyond the Fist, never to be heard from again. Dark and Karlana fled the final battle together, their fates unknown. Council Lord Jameis made a decree for all loyal elves to seize the lowlands for the good of the land. His campaign was halted and an armistice reached due to Corneilius Stormbringer. Her encounter with the Watchman in the north and his companions, though she would never admit openly, greatly changed her view on the non-elvish inhabitants of the land. From that time on, she was not just fighting to honor her brother and his legacy, but for the honor of all. The treaty led to many changes, including allowing emissaries from the lowlands to enter the hallowed mountain realm. Morris Os Cornelius being the first human to ever enter Freyhaven upon becoming king of the land following the rebel defeat of Atlantis, with Matthew Roland Scott as his chief advisor. The crew of the treacherous wench discovered a lost merfolk colony in the waters beyond the Stunlander coast. There, Lady Colleen and Aquazia were reunited with their mother Mara. To visit her merfolk kin, Colleen surreptitiously swapped the walking staff she'd given Arn-Iowan with a replica, thinking he wouldn't notice. Arn-Iowan did, but said nothing, knowing she needed the real staff more than he. Though it took most of his remaining years, Arn-Iowan Auditorius did see the day he longed for. The day he was able to sheathe and hang Serpent Fang over the hearth, the sign that a warrior's fighting days are finally at an end. Much to his dismay, Lady Colleen's natural tendencies caused her to break her promise to be with him at war's end, yet he bore her no ill will. Rather, his love for her burned all the more, hoping she would finally find what she sought and be at peace. Those are songs yet to be composed, assuming they ever see the sun or forever remain in shadow. Until then, fare thee well.